So a little 2024 update. I realize I've been missing in action a little bit, haven't reviewed that many clubs. A couple reasons. One, the shop's been busy, which is good, and I've used my free time mostly to play golf. And two, haven't been super happy with my golf swing. I don't feel like I'm hitting it all that well, which makes it tough to want to review clubs because I just don't feel like I'm going to be able to do the best job at that. So onto the swing first. We're going to talk about what I've been playing clubs-wise, made a few changes. Probably the thing that causes me the most trouble is, what you would call being too narrow or dragging the handle or holding onto angles for too long, too much lag. That's an issue I've had for a long time. I think when I was younger, I actively pursued trying to hang on to this because I wanted to hit the ball further, which it achieved. So I used to actually hit the ball pretty short when I was a teenager, even in my early 20s. And then working on that actually is probably the thing that picked me up a ton of speed, but unfortunately it also started to make the ball go a bit crooked. My common pattern would be from the top, I would tend to really pull the club close to me and really increase the angle on my wrists. So not just maintaining the angle, I'm actually significantly increasing it to the point where like the shaft, and I'll show you on slow motion, is like really close to my back shoulder in transition. So what that does is I tend to hold that for a long time. The hands get really low, and then I have a split second there near impact to try to get that out. So obviously I'm not going to strike a ball, and certainly with a driver, I'm not going to be striking a ball with a ton of angle on the wrist. If anything, this needs to be fairly lined up in terms of shaft and lead arm at impact, at least relatively. And so if you don't have that happening in a little bit smoother sequence, a little bit happening a little bit more over time from the top of the backswing. The thing that kind of clicked for me, I was just working on this week, is I'm trying to feel like from the top, I'm actually pushing my hands and the club handle significantly away from my body. So I've tried in the past to just come from the top and just send the shaft outward like that, basically, dumping the angles out. Haven't had much luck with it. I tend to actually do that and then reset it and get more narrow in the downswing anyway, so it's not really creating the right sequence for me. The difference between me making a normal swing and the difference between me actually sending this angle or sending the hands away from me tends to help me square the face up better, deliver some loft at impact, and not have such kind of a last minute effort to either square the face or leave the face open, pulling it, pushing it, all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to hit one with that feel, and then we'll go look at the high speed. So it's not my best attempt there. I would say that was a 2 out of 10 in terms of how much I exaggerated it. And when I look at the high speed, that's where I can really see what I've done. But even just looking at my numbers, I know if I only hit up on it 2 degrees, I only had 14 degrees of dynamic loft, I can be relatively certain that this was probably still pretty cranked down by impact. So I gotta push it. In my mind, I gotta feel like I'm literally going like this from the top. Let's say that's a better attempt. Maybe a 5 out of 10. So a little bit more up on it that time. A little bit more dynamic loft. Okay, that's my best attempt. It felt ridiculous, felt over-exaggerated, but I know it won't really look that way on camera, and I know based on the numbers, plus 4.8 angle of attack, close to 18 dynamic loft, an actual reasonable launch angle and some spin tells me I probably did a little bit better job. So let's look at the high speed a little bit closer. Okay, so from the top of the backswing, let's watch what happens in transition. So we're just gonna slightly move the club down from the top, maybe just a little bit. And there's already gonna be a little bit of a difference there. So what you'll see on the left is the shaft is kind of like, it's staying behind my head, actually. So there's so much angle in the wrists even right away, and also, I guess the distance of the elbow and physical distance of the hands is tighter. So the shaft is actually kind of still hiding behind my hat there, whereas here you can start to see a little bit of daylight when I've tried to get a little bit wider. So if we advance that a little further, what you'll notice is that becomes a little bit more pronounced. So it's easier to see now based on where the head of the club is. So the head of the club is still sort of on the gray background here of the wall. On the right, we actually have the head of the club getting towards the silver part. So it's kicking out more the shaft is not quite as close to my head. You can see there's a little bit more distance there. Let's keep going further. So I'm going to stop it about where glove hand gets sort of into my left thigh. So this is sort of a key spot for me because on the left here you can see I've got the glove, really into the leg here in terms of this position. The shaft is still above parallel to the ground. On the right, done my best to stop it at almost the exact same time. And what you'll see is the shaft is actually below parallel to the ground quite a bit. So quite a bit of difference there in terms of the angle in the wrists has been reduced by a substantial amount there. So what that means is from here on the right, I don't have as much work to do. I don't have to really get this club to impact. I have like maybe 0.8 of a second here or something, really little time to make this work. And then into impact, to be honest, you're not going to notice a whole lot here. To me, I maybe see the hands aren't quite as far forward, a little bit less shaft lean, and it just releasing the club a little bit better. Now, obviously, we wouldn't want to have the hands too far back, but that's, generally speaking for me, a bit of a good sign because I tend to have them too forward, if anything. Now, ball flight wise, these are very different results. So again, not that I could never hit a good shot before with my, my typical pattern, just required a lot of timing, a lot of work, wasn't consistent. The shot there, holding the angles, was a 30-yard push, pretty weak as well. The strike was really bad, kind of high in the face, which makes sense. Sort of hanging on to it too long, you might present the high part of the face. Angle of attack got way too close to zero. Path the same, wasn't really slightly inside like I normally am. And then obviously the ball speed was kind of weak, the face was open. Just overall not a good swing. And this is a miss I see on the golf course all the time, this kind of weak push. Drives me crazy. Whereas the one where I sort of exaggerated that feel, like I showed you, much better angle of attack, much better club path. This is actually for lefty, so it's slightly inside out, and more dynamic loft on the club. So at impact, while this is not the best fit for me because my driver was fit for someone who hangs onto the handle, I want to see this because if anything, I'll just loft the head lower or I'll change heads to a lower spin head, no problem. But you can see the ball is much more online. And comparatively, it had 4 degrees more dynamic loft than the handle dragged shot. So, a pretty substantial difference in the ball flight, pretty substantial difference in how it looks, and overall just going to be lower maintenance. The club head speed is not actually all that different. Okay, so the second thing that has long since been a pattern of mine for at least a decade is off the takeaway, really early and excessive rotation of the body. So the hips, the upper body turn a lot, which I'm not against. A good amount of turn is usually more beneficial than not for someone. But doing it really early, the way I do, gets things really out of sequence. So I actually get almost like full shoulder turn by the time my arm is like barely even parallel to the ground. It's too early. Hip turn is the same. It's like the full hip turn is done by like here, and then it just continues and makes my legs get really sloppy. Ideally, when I've got the club to maybe waist high, body probably shouldn't do a whole lot, right? Just like maybe a little tiny tweak of the chest maybe. By the time I get the club to arm parallel, we've started to turn the shoulders a little bit more, maybe a little bit with the hips. But ideally from face on here, you should still be able to maybe see a little bit of the logo of my shirt here. My chest shouldn't be completely gone to your view. Because what's happening when I do that is my finishing of backswing, I'm actually really over-rotated. And then from there, it's just really hard to sequence and time the downswing properly. It's either gonna be really good or it's gonna be really, really bad, which describes my game to a T. Trying to just not turn my body and resist it, I find to be a struggle. Feels very unathletic. I actually think it's a better thought for most people to sort of make the backswing feel a bit more hands dominated. Now, it sounds a bit strange. I wanna sort of get the club to here, only using my hands. So basically just placing in hands, setting the wrists a little earlier, well, a lot earlier, to the point where in my brain, my body, my waist, my chest is still pointing at the ball, but I've already got the club to here. Now, that doesn't require me like fight it with the body, that just requires me to actually just think, okay, my hands are gonna do the work. In doing this, the swing feels ridiculous. The only way I've been able to trust it, because I have the cameras here, I made a couple swings like that where they just literally felt like I took the club up with my hands. I went and looked at the cameras, which I'll show you, and I had made a full backswing, full turn. It just happened a little bit more gradually where the hips finished turning and the chest finished turning pretty much right as the club finished its journey to the top. And again, for your sequencing, it's important to have those things a little bit more in sync with each other. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want the body to finish excessively early, the arms to finish, because then the arms are gonna tend to start the downswing to sort of get things back in balance with each other. So let me hit you one like that. Yeah, not bad there. Okay, let's take a look. Taking the club away, what you'll notice right away is I've got the hands moving a little bit quicker on the right side. On the left side, I'm going to sort of drag the club back. So stopping these around arm parallel, this is the first big checkpoint you're going to notice. So one, the legs on the left side you can see are quite sloppy. Like I've made a huge hip turn for how little distance the club has traveled. You can see the legs are a little bit more structured on the right, which is good. So on the right side, you can actually see just a little bit of my chest, a little bit of the logo of my shirt. I'll just highlight it there, implying that we haven't rotated the chest, excessively by this point. We've maybe got, well, let's just, to guess, maybe 45 to 50 or 60 degrees, whereas on the left, if anything, I think I've passed 90 way too early. So this is pretty good in terms of the club is getting a little bit closer to vertical at the point when you can still see a little bit of the chest, much more structure with the legs. We're in better shape here. You can see here I've just really over-rotated. Don't have really anywhere to go. I mean, technically I shouldn't really turn any further than this. The problem is that my arms haven't gone far enough to make a real golf swing. Over-rotated early, long, excessive, kind of even excessive with the wrist hinge here. Club's a little bit laid off. It's a tough spot to be, tough spot to sequence the swing well from there. Again, not that I couldn't do it, but just making my life a lot more difficult. That sort of down cranking motion we mentioned earlier, to be honest, I feel like I almost do that more because I'm just trying to sort of almost hold on to the club and not let my arms get too far ahead of me. So if I were to put those two things together, I'm looking at this swing here, which I was quite happy with. We've got, a little bit earlier set of the wrists. We've got, not over rotating too much with the chest so I can still see a little bit of the front of my shirt, close to arm parallel. We've got the club a little bit more down the line at the top, less laid off. And then in transition, I'm trying to keep the club and hands much wider away from my head, basically away from my body, so that this shaft doesn't sneak behind my head at this point. And then when I get to the point when the club is sort of arriving back at my trail leg, I don't want to see it, north of shaft parallel to the ground, let's say, meaning I'm holding on to it too much. So these two things, not easy to work on, to be honest, very hard to commit to in season. Our season's not done, but we're nearing the end of it. So these are the things I'm going to be working on, very dedicated over the winter, because I want to get these right. I don't want to keep trying to layer Band-Aids on the swing, because I've sort of been on a plateau for quite a long time. We haven't really gotten any better. And it's frustrating. So, in terms of club testing, I want to be a little more consistent with this type of swing. And in terms of playing golf, I want to hit more fairways and more greens. Okay, so the bag. So I have changed some things from the last time I did this. A couple things are more like, model updates, things I've been sent in terms of just updating to 2024. And a couple things are actually a little bit more of a wholesale change based on things I've tested, things I'm changing with my game, and sometimes just a little bit of fun. So one thing I've tried my best to commit to and not change is my putter. So I've had this Ping PLD DS72. It's kind of, the Victor Hovland head shape, I think. It's kind of what he's using as far as I can recall. Again, there is no change whatsoever to this. It is a slightly different bend on this. They took a little bit of the toe hang out. So it has, I think, less toe hang than it probably is supposed to. So I think at the time that was good for me. I'm definitely more inclined to blame myself in terms of bad putting. I have putt well with this, I would say, at times this year. So I'm trying to stick with it. I mean, there are other things in the shop that tempt me. Sometimes a lab putter looks at me a certain way during the day, and I sort of think maybe I'll take you to the golf course. So wedges I did actually, lucky for me, get fit for out in California at TPI with Titleist for SM10s. Actually had SM8s all of last season, so I didn't ever change from SM8s. So the 50 degree, didn't really make any changes there. It's just a 50 degree. It is the F grind 8. So I don't probably need the higher bounce in this, so I just kind of got the lower bounce, kind of a no-brainer. The full sole, nothing particularly special there. The 54 is a little bit more interesting. So it's a 54. It's a 10S. So in my fitting. Pitching the ball with sort of a mid-trajectory shot, not just pulling the highest lofted wedge all the time, was a good lesson for me to actually use the 54 a little bit more. So longer bunker shot, or pitch shot where I want a little bit of run, or maybe just a lower pitch shot with a little bit of spin. I did much better with a thinner sole of the S grind, and 10 degree is more of a mid bounce, I guess, maybe not super low bounce on the sand wedge. But that's what the fitter said for me was the best, and he did a really good job. He was just handing me things and saying not to look, which I think is a bit of a Vokey special in terms of fitting. So I was just trying to be pretty objective in terms of what was giving me the best contact, the best sort of like, trajectory, coming out a certain way with some spin, not kind of popping up weird or bouncing into the strike. And then into the 58. The 58 is the one that's the most interesting for me this year. I changed to something that was recommended for me that I would have never probably committed to on my own, which is the 4-degree bounce T grind. So, I would say traditionally that low bounce would have scared me. I mean, we've all chunked the ball plenty to not want to think about playing 4 degrees of bounce. But what I learned from the guys at Vokey is more so the grind is the more important thing, the letter on the grind. Don't get too hung up on the number on the bounce. I thought I would chunk this thing. I thought I would have bad results with it. If anything, it was the one that gave me consistently the cleanest contact on basically all my shots. Pitch shots off a tight lie I found were better. When I needed to open the face, it sat nicely. And again, this was kind of in the running blind. I didn't know what I was hitting with the last kind of few wedges in terms of what was there. I had an 8-degree M grind, which I've played in the past in the mix. It was actually kind of bouncing into the strike a bit, so I actually had too much bounce because I'm quite shallow. And then why 58? Very simple, and I think my fitter did a very good job. He basically said every single shot I hit with that club, if it was a 60-degree, every single launch angle was too high. So on the full swing, too high. Pitch shots, launch angles, too high. We had TrackMan out there. So he just said to me, why not try the 58? Basically a little less static loft. We'll give you a little bit less dynamic loft. Kind of a no-brainer. The thing that I changed the most, that was a bit of a surprise. So I've played a set of T100s the last 2 or 3 generations. It's always been just an iron I really liked. They felt good, they looked good. And I started the year with those. I played quite well with them. Didn't really see any reason to change. But I will say something showed up on my doorstep that I wasn't expecting to see, which was a left-handed set of the Cobra Limited 3D, or however you want to say that. Little play on words they have. The 3D printed limited series iron that they created, which is really cool. So I played some golf with them. Initially played some golf with them at the standard loft, so it's a 30-degree 7-iron. I probably would say it was almost like I didn't have enough clubs for that. I needed another wedge to play them that way. The flight was amazing. Like, not that I hit them too low or something, just I would have had to get a gap wedge, which I didn't have. I would have had to reconfigure my wedges entirely, which I didn't really want to do in the middle of the season. So I bent them a little bit weak. So the 7-iron is at 32 degrees. I basically based the set off that. The pitching wedge is at 45.5, I think I bent it to. So it flows pretty well into my 50-degree in the Vokey. Couple things. One, I would say miss-hit wise, I'm getting away with murder on these, which I kind of like on the golf course. T1s are a great iron, but I wouldn't say they're the most forgiving, nor are they meant to be. They're meant to be more forgiving than a Blade or a CB. These I can really get away with some poor shots. 2, playing something stronger lofted, I'm basically just hitting one less club all the time. So, if I had a shot on the course where I would normally hit 8-iron, I'm hitting 9-iron. It's not a ton of loft difference. It is a stronger lofted club a bit by 2 degrees now that I've adjusted them, but hitting one less club for me definitely helps my confidence. And that's more of a swing fault issue with me, obviously. Most people agree with that. Once they get past the 7-iron, your comfort level goes down. So if I can avoid hitting a longer club, generally speaking, my results are better. I get that I'm technically cheating with the loft. Address position on these, it doesn't look that different than most players' irons. The blade length's a little bit longer, so it's a little bit longer heel to toe. I got used to that pretty quickly. This style, this category of iron, the 30-degree 7-iron type club, they're usually thin face clubs. These are not. The face of these is actually pretty traditional in terms of thickness, and it sounds and it feels that way. It is more distance orientated. It is a little bit more forgiveness than I'm used to with my irons. But off the face, it actually feels a lot more like a normal kind of player's iron. The 4-iron, I did not bend the 4-iron weaker. Kind of just left the way that Cobra sends it. I think it's either 21 or 20 degrees, something like that. Because for me, I'm only carrying 13 clubs right now. So it actually helps me space my clubs a little bit better. It can be a T club for me at a lot of courses where I can carry that ball out there, 230, 240 with some roll. This thing is a GT2. Which I just got recently. It is an 18-degree head, but I have it lofted down to 17.25. A TR blue in there. It's an 8X. So the shaft is actually built, I think, a 1/4 inch shorter even than 5 in length. So it's a bit of a weird build, but I tried it at Titleist. I really liked it. It was flying kind of like 260, 265. Again, that was on the range and a fit. When I get on the course, I get a little steeper. I make a little worse swing at times. It has been getting a little spinny. have been hitting it a little bit short, not the club's fault. In the short term, if I was gonna put a 14th club back in, what would make the most sense is for me to put this back to 18 degrees. So it goes, let's say maybe 255 carry, and then add a 3-wood into the bag for situations when I need it. I just don't have that many instances where I have a 260-yard shot. The driver is the GT2 model at 9 degrees. Again, from the beginning of the video, as you saw, my tendency with that kind of handle dragging usually means that a lower spin model is not for me, which is why I did the 2 instead of the 3. And super low loft, an 8 degree is not generally good for me, so I usually go at least to 9. Now, I hope that will change, just based on improving the swing. So what I hope in the short term is that this actually starts to spin too much, and I might actually need to loft it lower, and then maybe by next year look at something a little bit lower spin, based on me delivering the club a little bit more the way that I want to. And I've just got a TR Blue 6X in there. I haven't changed shafts in quite a while. There's been other shafts I've tried. I've got the new blue board from Mitsubishi. I just had to throw a grip on it, probably try some with that. The white board they sent me as well was fantastic. And last thing that I think is a little bit unique, new change for me is I re-grip my clubs with some Gripmaster leather grips. They are mid-size, so they're a little bit larger than what I've been playing. Main reason I find for myself, hot day or rainy day, I just have a hard time holding onto the club. And I just find that they're so tacky. They're almost like ridiculously tacky. You can hear my hand like sticking to them. Just find it gives me confidence that the club is secure in my hand. I'm not gonna let go. Just playing the standard Pro V1, the latest version of it. Honestly, nice and simple. It is the right window of spin on my irons. That's the reason I picked it. And my golf bag itself is a Titleist Lynx Legend golf bag in black with the Golf Liberty logo on it. That's it, swing and bag update. Again, I know I've been missing in action, have been making many videos. I'm about to go on vacation for a week, but when I get back, I intend to really get back at it. Filming, I need to review that driver that I just showed you and the irons that I just showed you. Those will be my #1 priority when I get back. Thanks for watching.